single mom texted the wrong number, begging for help, and woke up with the mafia boss holding her baby. The sound was a seal's bark, wet and sharp, tearing through the midnight quiet of the apartment. It was the only sound, besides the rattle of the window pane as the New Jersey rain lashed against it, and the low, mournful groan of a foghorn out in Kingsmouth Harbor. Mariah Calderon held her son tighter. Leo, barely 1 year old, arched his back, his small chest collapsing with the effort of a breath that wouldn't come. Croup! It had started as a sniffle at 6 p.m. and was now, at 1:30 in the morning, a respiratory monster. "Shh, mijo, shh, Mama's here." Her voice was a frayed whisper. She was 23, and this kind of terror aged her by the second. She looked at her phone. The battery read 9%. Her bank account balance, which she knew by heart, was $47.18. The emergency room at St. Jude's meant an $800 facility fee just to walk in the door, before they even looked at Leo. That was $800 she didn't have. Rent was due in 4 days. The radiator in the corner was a cold block of iron. The pilot light long dead, the landlord ignoring her calls. Mariah's gaze darted around the small, damp room that served as their living room and bedroom. Her eyes landed on the wall by the door, next to the light switch that only worked half the time. Taped there, curling at the edges, was a sticker she'd barely noticed. She'd seen it downstairs in the building's coin-op laundry room, stuck to the side of the number 3 dryer. Port Watch hotline. A phone number. Nothing else. She'd asked Mrs. Petrov, in apartment 2B, about it last week. The older woman, smelling of cabbage and cigarettes, had just shrugged. "Is for the harbor. You need anything, you text. They watch." Need anything was a void. Did it mean a broken faucet, a domestic dispute, or a baby who couldn't breathe? Leo let out another barking gasp, his small face pale in the gloom. Panic, cold and sharp, made Mariah's decision. Her fingers, slick with nervous sweat, fumbled with the phone. She typed in the number. What could she even say? "Need help. Baby sick. Can't breathe, right?" Her thumb hovered. It was insane. It was probably a typo for the actual Port Authority, and they would send a cop who would see the mold on the wall and the empty fridge and call social services. But Leo's breath hitched again, a sickening, high-pitched whistle on the inhale. She typed again. "Baby sick. Croup. He can't breathe. Please." She hit send, then, realizing they had no address, she fumbled with the settings and sent her phone's current location pin. For a full minute, nothing, just the rain and the awful scraping sound from Leo's chest. She rocked him, her own breathing catching in sympathy, her heart hammering a desperate rhythm against her ribs. The phone screen lit up, making her jump, a single text message from the unknown number. "Door unlocked. Open for no one but me." A chill that had nothing to do with the broken heater washed over her. Me. Not an officer or a unit, just me. She didn't have a chain lock, just a deadbolt that she'd paid for herself. Her hand trembled as she reached out and turned the knob. The click of the bolt retracting sounded deafeningly loud. She sat back down on the thin mattress on the floor, pulling Leo back against her chest, her body rigid, every nerve ending screaming. She was staring at the door when the knock came. It wasn't a frantic pounding. It was 3 distinct, measured raps, heavy, solid, patient. She couldn't speak, couldn't say, "Come in." The door swung open on silent hinges. The rain and the smell of the wet pavement and the harbor's low-tide brine washed into the room. He filled the doorway, and he was tall, dressed in a way that didn't belong in this rotting building. A long, dark rain slicker, unbuttoned, revealed a black cashmere turtleneck beneath. His shoulders were broad, and the shadows clung to the sharp planes of his face. He wasn't looking at her. His gaze was fixed, laser sharp, on Leo. Behind him, a woman slipped in. She was sharp, angular, dressed in dark scrubs, carrying a heavy-looking black nylon bag. The man stepped inside, bringing the cold with him. He didn't introduce himself. He just nodded at the woman. Ivy, the child. The woman. Ivy was at Mariah's side in an instant. She wasn't smiling. There was no bedside manner, just pure, focused efficiency. "Mama, I'm Ivy. I'm a paramedic. I need you to hold him steady. Just like that, I'm going to put this mask over his face. It's going to make a loud noise, but it's just air and medicine." A portable nebulizer machine materialized from the bag, plugged into a battery pack. A small mask was attached. As soon as the hissing started, Leo began to wail, a thin, terrified sound trapped behind the barking cough. "I know, mijo, I know," Mariah wept, her tears falling onto Leo's damp hair. The man stood by the door, perfectly still, watching. His presence was an anchor, heavy and dark. Mariah finally looked up at him. Truly looked. He had dark eyes, an intensity that felt like a physical weight. His black hair was cut short, military clean. A faint, white scar ran through his left eyebrow. Splitting it, he was Enzo Graziani. She didn't know his name, but every longshoreman, every bodega owner, every cop on the beat in Kingsmouth knew that face. He was the harbor. While Ivy worked, Enzo's gaze left Leo and swept the apartment. It was a clinical assessment. He saw the peeling paint, the single pan in the sink, the thin blanket Mariah used for a curtain. His eyes paused on the broken radiator, then moved to the refrigerator, which she had propped closed with a chair because the seal was broken. He looked at it long enough for Mariah to feel a hot flush of shame. After 5 minutes, the barking cough was softening, the whistling inhale was fading. Leo's cries quieted into exhausted, gulping sobs. "It's a steroid," Ivy said quietly, packing her gear. "Budesonide. It will bring the swelling in his airway down. He'll be okay tonight. He needs warmth. He needs to be out of this damp." Mariah could only nod, her entire body shaking with the adrenaline crash, the relief so profound it felt like grief. The man, Enzo, finally spoke. His voice was low, a rumble laced with the gravel of the docks, yet it was inexplicably warm. It didn't match the cold assessment in his eyes. "I'll handle the breathing," he said, and his gaze met Mariah's. "You handle the holding." He motioned to the door. "Ivy will carry the bag. You carry the boy. We're leaving." "Leaving where?" Mariah's voice was hoarse. "Somewhere warm," he said, as if it were the only answer that mattered. He didn't wait for an argument. He and Ivy stepped into the hall. Mariah, clutching Leo, grabbed the thin diaper bag, 3 diapers, half a pack of wipes and her phone. She didn't even stop to find her shoes, just followed them in her socks. Downstairs, a black sedan was idling at the curb. It looked like any other high-end Uber, but Mariah noticed the glass seemed thicker, the way the rain beaded on it unnaturally. Enzo's driver, a man built like a concrete piling, held the back door open. Enzo didn't get in the front. He motioned for Mariah to get in the back, and he slid in beside her, leaving a respectable, professional distance between them. Ivy took the passenger seat. The doors closed with a heavy, solid thunk. The car pulled away from the curb, silent and smooth. Mariah looked back at her building, a concrete block of misery, and then at the man beside her. She was exhausted, disoriented, cradling her sleeping, finally breathing son. She had no idea who these people were. She had just texted a random number on a sticker, a number for the Wardens, Enzo Graziani's personal network for solving problems the law couldn't, or wouldn't, touch. The warmth of the car's heater, the soft leather of the seat, and the rhythmic sweep of the windshield wipers were a lullaby. Mariah's eyelids, weighted with days of stress and hours of panic, grew impossibly heavy. She fought it, tried to keep her eyes on the back of the driver's head, but the exhaustion won. Her head lolled, and she fell into a deep, dark sleep. She woke with a gasp. The air was different. It was warm, dry, and smelled faintly of lemons and clean linen. The light wasn't the sickly yellow of Kingsmouth streetlights, but a soft, indirect glow. She was in a bed, a real bed, with sheets so soft they felt like water, a heavy down comforter over her. She was alone. "Leo," she panicked, throwing the covers off. She was still in her clothes from the night before, her socks damp. The room was vast, a bedroom suite painted in soft grays and blues. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a dark, glittering expanse of water, the North Channel. From high up, a penthouse. She heard it then. Not a cough, not a cry, a sound. A low, rumbling hum, a voice. She scrambled out of bed, her heart in her throat, and pushed open a thick, heavy door that led to the main living area. The room was dark, lit only by the sweeping beam of a distant lighthouse and the ambient glow of the city far below. And there, standing in front of the massive window, his back to her, was Enzo Graziani. He had shed the rain slicker and was just in the black turtleneck and trousers. He wasn't alone. He was holding Leo. Mariah stopped, her hand flying to her mouth. He held the baby high against his chest, Leo's head tucked securely under his chin. One large, scarred hand splayed protectively across the baby's back. He was rocking, a slow, steady rhythm, side to side, and he was humming, a deep, hoarse baritone, a tune she didn't recognize. It sounded old, Italian, and profoundly sad. Leo, who never settled for anyone but her, was fast asleep. His breathing deep and even, his small body utterly relaxed against the solid wall of the Mafia boss's chest. Sunlight, that's what she noticed second. The first was the breathing. Leo was in a bassinet next to the bed, a sleek, modern contraption of gray mesh and dark metal that looked more like a piece of high-end audio equipment than something for a baby. His chest was rising and falling in a slow, deep, perfectly healthy rhythm. The terrible, barking seal cough was gone. Mariah sagged against the headboard, the relief so total it left her dizzy. The light was pale, clean, and streaming in through windows that must have been 20 feet high. She was in the penthouse she had glimpsed last night. Outside, the rain had stopped. The North Channel was a sheet of metallic blue, dotted with container ships moving silently toward the sea. The door opened, not a creak, just a whisper of air. Enzo Graziani stood there. He had changed. The black turtleneck was gone, replaced by a simple, form-fitting black long-sleeved shirt and dark trousers. He held 2 cups. "He's been clear since 4 a.m., Enzo said, his voice the same low rumble as the night before, but without the rain-slicked urgency. "Ivy checked him an hour ago. The inflammation is down." He walked in, not tentatively, but with the quiet ownership of a panther surveying its territory. He placed 1 cup on the bedside table. It was water. The other he kept coffee black. How did you—" Mariah's throat was raw. "You knew my name. Last night. You called me Mama. But Ivy, she knew my name." He took a sip of his coffee, his eyes unreadable. "It was on your name tag, Mariah, pinned to your shirt under your jacket, tied and grind. You were still wearing your apron when we arrived." She looked down. She was still in yesterday's clothes jeans and the thin polo shirt from her shift, the green apron now hopelessly wrinkled. The pin was still there. Mariah, trainee. She felt a flush of humiliation. He had seen her at her most desperate, in her work uniform, in that squalid room. "Where are we?" she asked, pulling the thick comforter up to her chin. "My residence. Some call it the Citadel. It overlooks the North Channel. You and Leo are safe here. I have to go. I have to get Leo home. I can't pay you for this. For the doctor. This room." "Sit," he said. It wasn't a request, but it wasn't harsh either. It was a statement of fact. There is nothing to pay. Last night was a medical emergency. The port watch line is not a billing service. "What is it, then?" she challenged, finding a sliver of her usual fire. "The police, the Port Authority." He walked to the window, gazing down at the docks that were clearly his dominion. "No, the police are a bureaucracy. The Port Authority is a corporation. They are not built for speed. They are not built for people like you." He turned. "That number is mine. It was placed in the laundry room and in the bodegas and at the longshoremen's hall. For a simple reason. I am responsible for what happens on my harbor, the weak, the overlooked. They are my responsibility. It is not a government agency. Mariah's jaw tightened. I am not weak, and I don't need charity. His eyes softened. Just a fraction. It was the most minuscule change, but it shifted the entire energy of the room. I know. What I saw last night was a mother with no options. There is no shame in that. He took another sip of coffee. Last night was triage. Miss Calderon, triage is free. Everything that happens now, he said, pausing, is a negotiation. A negotiation for what? Your apartment is uninhabitable, he stated simply. The radiator is broken. The wiring is faulty. The mold in the walls is what made your son sick. He cannot go back there. I'll find another place. I'll get my deposit back. You will, he agreed. In the meantime, my men are at your building right now. They are replacing the radiator, changing the locks, and running new electrical. They will be done by this afternoon. I'm also posting a car outside, a soft detail. It will remain for 1 week, 7 days. Mariah stared at him. Why? Why would you do that? What do you get out of it? I get to know that a child on my harbor is not sleeping in the cold, he said. Then his expression hardened slightly. And I get to know who comes and goes. And if I say no, that is your right, but they will finish the repairs regardless. She knew she was cornered, but the outline had mentioned a condition. Her condition, I'll accept the repairs. I will. I'll pay you back for the parts. He gave a tiny nod, accepting the lie they both knew she couldn't fulfill. But the car, she said, her voice shaking but firm, the soft detail, and me being here, it comes with a rule. My rule. He inclined his head, waiting. You don't get a say. You don't get to tell me how to be his mother. You don't get to make decisions for him. My son, my rules. No one, she emphasized, interferes with my right to be his parent. A long silence stretched between them. Enzo studied her. His gaze so intense it felt like a physical touch. Finally. He nodded once. Your terms are acceptable. As if summoned by the agreement, the door opened again. A woman in a severe, immaculate black dress entered. She was older, with salt and pepper hair pulled into a bun so tight it seemed to pull her face taut. She radiated an efficiency that was colder than steel. Sir, she said, her voice crisp, Pilar has the items you requested. Mr. Crow is here and is waiting in your study. Thank you, Pilar. Enzo said, This is Pilar Duarte. She manages the residence. Pilar gave Mariah a look that was neither kind nor unkind. It was an appraisal. Pilar then moved to the hall and returned with several large, expensive-looking bags. Not designer clothes, but practical things. A pack of diapers, wipes, several cans of the specific formula Mariah used, and for her, a simple, clean set of gray sweats, a t-shirt, and new socks. A shower is through that door, Enzo said, motioning. Pilar will take the child while you... No, Mariah's voice was sharp. I'll take him with me. He can be in the bassinet. Enzo looked at Pilar. Pilar looked at Mariah. A silent, high-stakes battle of wills passed between the two women. Pilar nodded. As you wish, madam. She left the bags on a chair and exited. Enzo turned to leave. Nico Vass, my driver, will be ready when you are. He will take you back to your apartment when the work is complete. He paused at the door. Thaddeus Crow is my legal counsel. He manages the Harbor Light Fund. The what? The entity paying for your radiator, Enzo said, and was gone. An hour later, showered and dressed in the clean, soft clothes, Mariah felt almost human. Leo was awake, clean and fed, but he was starting to fuss. He was hungry again. She walked out into the main living area. The penthouse was a sprawling space of glass, steel, and dark wood. It was minimalist, masculine, and immaculate. She found the kitchen. It was larger than her entire apartment, a sterile expanse of stainless steel. Enzo was there, and he was standing at the counter, frowning at the can of formula Pilar had brought. He had a bottle in one hand and a scoop in the other, and he was clearly, profoundly, out of his element. You're doing it wrong, she said, her voice small. He looked up, not startled, but interrupted. He's hungry. You're putting too much water in. It's 2 ounces of water for every scoop, and the water has to be warm. He held the bottle out to her, a silent admission of defeat. She took it, emptied it, and expertly prepared it, testing the temperature on her wrist. He watched her every move. "He doesn't usually take a bottle," she murmured, mostly to herself. "I know," Enzo said, "but Ivy said he's dehydrated from the fever. He needs the extra fluids." She turned to hand him the bottle, but he motioned for her to feed Leo. She sat at the sterile kitchen island, and Leo latched on immediately, his small fists kneading the air. As she sat, she noticed Enzo was no longer wearing the pristine black shirt from earlier. This one was identical, but there, on the dark cotton just below his collarbone, was a small, damp, white stain, a splash of formula. He hadn't noticed it. The sight of it, this tiny, domestic imperfection on this intimidating, powerful man, cracked his terrifying facade. Just for a second, it made him human. While Leo drank, her eyes scanned the room, landing on a small, framed photo on a shelf between cookbooks that looked like they had never been opened. It was a young woman, laughing, with eyes just like Enzo's. She was standing on a pier, the Kingsmouth Lighthouse in the background. Tucked next to the photo was an old, laminated piece of paper, a flyer. "Kingsmouth Community Helpline. Don't face the storm alone. Call us. Port Watch." Mariah looked from the flyer to the photo, and then to Enzo. "That number," she whispered, realization dawning. "Port Watch." It was hers, wasn't it? Enzo's face, which had been resting in a neutral mask, tightened. He didn't look at the photo. He looked out the window. My sister, Elara, she was a social worker. She believed the harbor. She believed everyone deserved a life raft. What happened to her? "The city cut her funding," he said, his voice flat, all the warmth gone, replaced by Arctic ice. "They called her program redundant. She ran out of money. She tried to help one too many people, and she's gone." He finally looked at Mariah, his eyes holding a darkness she had only glimpsed last night. "I kept the number active. I provide the funding, but I run it differently." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken history. Mariah understood. This wasn't charity. This was a legacy, a memorial, maintained with money and, she suspected, force. Enzo seemed to shake off the memory. He was all business again. The tide and grind is your morning job. You do temp work in the afternoons. Bookkeeping. Mariah tensed. "How did you know that?" "My business is information. You took a 3-week contract at the Haven Union on Pier 6, reconciling accounts." Mariah's face flushed. She looked down at Leo, avoiding Enzo's gaze. It was just data entry. Their books are a mess, reconciling invoices for their new redevelopment project. "And what did you see?" "Mariah?" His voice was low, persuasive. "It was nothing. I'm not even a real accountant. It was just messy. Numbers that didn't line up." "Tell me." She swallowed, her heart suddenly beating faster. There were some unusual transfers, large sums coded as compliance fees or security consulting, moving to an outside account, an LLC I didn't recognize. The transfers didn't seem to match any of the work invoices. It's probably just how they do business. Enzo Graziani went very still. He studied her, the way a scientist studies a reaction, watching for the one element that will change the entire equation. He'd been looking for something, and in the panicked, sleep-deprived honesty of a 23-year-old bookkeeper, he had just found it. Mariah looked down at Leo, who had finished his bottle and was drifting into a milk-drunk sleep in her arms. The warmth of the penthouse felt like a trap, comfortable and dangerous. "It is a redevelopment project," she said, her voice quiet, barely above a whisper. "Down at the old shipping yards. Haven Union is handling the payroll and the vendor accounts for the preliminary phase. The money is all coming from one developer, a man named Barlow Quinn." Enzo's face remained impassive, but his eyes sharpened. He knew the name. Everyone on the harbor knew Barlow Quinn. Quinn was a legitimate monster, a man who bought history, tore it down, and built glass boxes, leaving communities gutted in his wake. "Quinn's money," Enzo stated. "Go on." "The funding is not direct," she said, her gaze dropping to the floor. She was twisting a loose thread on the sleeve of the soft gray sweatshirt he had provided. "The capital comes from a fund called Ridgecrest Renewal, but the invoices for specialized services, like environmental hazard surveys and on-site security, they are not paid by the union. They are paid by a different company, Olive Finch Holdings." "A shell," Enzo said. It was not a question. "I think so. The part that felt wrong was the reference codes. When an invoice from Olive Finch was paid, the reference number in their system, which was just a long string of digits, it would show up again in the Haven Union books, attached to off-book invoices for security that had no details, just a payment authorization and that same code." She was speaking faster now, the anxiety of knowing this making her flush. It looked like they were paying twice for the same thing, or maybe they were just hiding what the security was really for. Enzo watched her, not pushing, not interrogating. He let the silence sit, a heavy, velvet weight in the vast room. He moved from the kitchen counter to a sleek, dark wood desk in the corner of the living room, a space that looked like it had been carved from shadow, from a drawer. He produced a laptop. It was thin, matte black, and had no logos, no branding of any kind. "This is air-gapped," he said, placing it on the kitchen island. The sound of the metal on the marble was a soft, definitive click. "It has never touched my network. It will never touch it again. If you are willing, I would like you to look at the Haven Union public-facing portal. See if those codes link to anything." Mariah eyed the machine as if it were a snake. "You are asking me to hack them." "I am asking you to log in as an employee, which you are," he corrected gently, his voice smooth. "I'm asking you to look at the things you have already seen, and this time, to follow the thread." He pushed the laptop toward her. "I will not look over your shoulder. This is your choice, your boundary." She hesitated. This was the line between being a victim of circumstance and being a participant, but she thought of the mold in her apartment, of the broken heater, of the kind of desperation that made a person text a mystery number. Barlow Quinn was the kind of man who built his glass towers on the foundations of that desperation. She sat down at the island, shifting Leo to her lap. "He needs to sleep. I cannot do this while holding him." "Pilar," Enzo called, not raising his voice. The housekeeper appeared from a hallway, her posture rigid. "Take the child. Stay with him in the guest room. Do not leave him." Mariah's breath hitched, a sharp, panicked sound. "My rule, you said—" "Pilar will watch him sleep, 10 feet away from you," Enzo amended, gesturing to the open-plan living room. The bassinet was still there. "He will not be out of your sight. Is this acceptable?" Mariah looked at the housekeeper, whose face was a mask of professional neutrality, and then back at Enzo. She nodded, her shoulders tight. Pilar moved the bassinet with practiced, silent ease to the seating area, clearly visible from the kitchen island. Mariah took a deep breath and opened the laptop. It was clean, just an operating system and a browser. Her hands were shaking, but the familiar interface of the accounting software grounded her. She logged into the Haven Union temp portal. She pulled up the invoices for Olive Finch Holdings. The reference codes were there, just as she remembered. She cross-referenced them with the duplicate security payments. They matched, but this time, she saw something new. A scanned attachment on the security invoice she had missed before, because it was not a bill. It was a certificate. "Federal Commerce Security Unit," she read aloud, her voice trembling. "FCSU. I have never heard of that." "Neither have I," Enzo said from across the room. He had moved to the window, his back to her, giving her the space he promised. She clicked on the scanned image. It was a certificate of compliance. It declared the Haven Union project fully compliant with FCSU regulations for hazardous material handling and waterfront security. It was signed by a director, May Lin. "This stamp," Mariah whispered, zooming in on the image. "It looks cheap. The ink is smudged. It is purple. Federal stamps are blue or black, and the seal, it is blurry, like a bad photocopy." "Because it is not real," Enzo said. He had not moved, but his voice was hard, a piece of chipped flint. "It is a phantom, a scarecrow. They have invented a federal agency to justify their own security fees. They are billing themselves, laundering Quinn's money through Olive Finch, and paying this fake agency for compliance. And that compliance is just their own off-book muscle." Just then, Ivy Sloane let herself into the penthouse, her face all business. She held a tablet, her quick eyes taking in the scene: Mariah at the laptop, Enzo at the window. "Boss," she said, nodding curtly to Mariah, "I ran a trace on the portal access for those Olive Finch invoices. Like you asked. The approval signature from the FCSU. It is digital, logged every time a payment clears." "And," Enzo asked, turning from the window, "and it is not coming from an office. It is coming from a mobile IP, one that pings the same location every single time a transfer goes through. A container. C-17, out on Pier Dory." Enzo went still. Pier Dory was not his. It was contested territory, a gray zone run by smaller, scrappier players who had not yet bent the knee. "So," Enzo mused, "they approve the payments from inside a shipping container. That is where they run the financial side of the scam." He turned to Mariah. The air in the room felt 20 degrees colder, the sunlight from the windows suddenly meaningless. "Mariah, you have done well. Now you must listen. Barlow Quinn does not use lawyers for problems like this. If they are using a fake federal agency, it means they are comfortable using force to back it up. If they find out you are looking—" He did not need to finish. "They do not call the law," he said, his voice a blade. "They call wolves." The terror from the night before came rushing back, but this time it was not for Leo's health. It was for his life. "I have to go," she said, standing up so fast the chair scraped loudly on the stone floor. "I have to get Leo. I cannot be in this. I just needed my son to breathe." "And he will," Enzo said, holding up a hand, not to stop her, but to calm her. "My driver, Nico, is downstairs. He will take you, but you will not stay there tonight." "You cannot tell me what to do," she shot back, her voice raw. "I am not," he said, his voice patient but absolute. "I am telling you the facts. My men are in your apartment. The plaster is wet. The paint is curing. The new heater is not yet certified by the gas company. It is not safe. They are also installing new smoke alarms and a carbon monoxide detector. It is a work zone." He was lying. She knew he was lying, or at least exaggerating. This was his way of keeping her under his roof, under his protection, without violating the terms of their negotiation. He was giving her an excuse she could accept without sacrificing her pride. "One more night," he said. "Here, where I know you are secure. Tomorrow, Nico will take you to inspect the work. If it meets your approval, you are free to go." She stared at him, caught in his web of pragmatic generosity. She was a bird with a broken wing, and he had just offered her a golden cage, insisting it was a nest. "One night," she said, her voice brittle. "Then I am gone. I cannot see any more of this. I will not—" "Agreed." The tension broke. Pilar, seeing the truce, stepped away from the bassinet. Leo, sensing the shift in the room, let out a small, waking fuss. Mariah moved to get him, but Enzo was closer. He reached down, his large, scarred hands surprisingly gentle, and lifted the baby from the bassinet. He did it with an awkwardness that was almost charming, but with a confidence that was absolute. Leo blinked, his big brown eyes focusing on Enzo's face. He was not scared. He did not cry. Enzo settled the baby against his chest, the same way he had the night before. And then, Leo did something he rarely did for strangers. He reached up, his tiny starfish hand unfurling and his fingers curled, grasping the thick material of Enzo's black shirt, right by the collar, a tiny, perfect grip. Mariah watched, the man who had just spoken of wolves, the man who controlled the harbor and moved in shadows, went utterly still. His eyes closed for a fraction of a second. His shoulders, which were always braced, always ready, seemed to drop an inch. The hard lines around his mouth softened. It was, Mariah thought, like watching a dimmer switch being turned, the intensity, the danger, the sheer, crushing weight of his power. It all just faded, dialed down from a spotlight to a pilot light. He looked down at Leo, a strange, unreadable expression on his face, a mixture of wonder and a deep, profound ache. He looked up and caught Mariah watching him. He did not look away, did not try to hide the vulnerability she had just seen. He just held her gaze, the baby connecting them both, a silent, breathing bridge between their two worlds. And in that moment, Mariah felt something shift in her own chest, something that was not fear and not gratitude, but something dangerously close to hope. She did not stay the one more night. When morning came, she inspected her apartment. It was transformed. The damp chill was gone, replaced by a steady, silent warmth from a new, silver radiator. The peeling paint by the window was gone, the plaster smooth, the paint new and odorless. There was a new, heavy deadbolt on the door, and small, white circles on the ceiling smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. It was clean. It was safe. Nico Vass, the driver who was built like a vault, carried her few bags up. "Mister, Graziani said to tell you the car will be downstairs, sir, 24 hours. "I'm not a sir," Mariah snapped, her nerves frayed. "No, ma'am," Nico said, completely unbothered. For 2 days, she lived in the strange, safe bubble. A black sedan, as plain as the one she had ridden in, was always parked across the street. It was a visible promise and a visible threat. She went to her morning shift at the Tide and Grind, and the car was there. She came home, and it was there. She did not go to her afternoon temp job at Haven Union. She called in sick, her stomach in knots. But by the third night, the reality of her life pressed in. The new heater was warm, but the fridge was still empty. The $47 she had was now $19. Thursday was community pickup night at the Seabright Community Kitchen, where she got supplemental groceries and, most importantly, diapers and formula. She bundled Leo into his carrier, a front pack sling, and headed downstairs. Nico was out of the car before she hit the pavement. "Ma'am, where are you going?" "To the kitchen. On Seabright, I need food." Nico's face was impassive. "Please wait. I need to get the car." "I am not getting in the car. It is 6 blocks away. I am walking." She held his gaze, her chin high. She would not be chauffeured to a food pantry. "Your job is to watch me, not drive me. So, watch." She turned and started walking before he could argue. She heard him speak into his sleeve, a low, urgent murmur. She did not care. She needed to feel the pavement under her own feet. The kitchen was in the basement of an old church, smelling of bleach and boiled potatoes. She was grateful, took her bag of shelf-stable milk, pasta, and a small box of diapers, and left. The sun was down, the streetlights casting a weak, orange glow on the damp pavement. She pulled her thin jacket tighter, Leo a warm weight against her chest. She turned onto her street. It was quieter here, darker. She was halfway down the block when the men stepped out of the alley. 3 of them. They did not look like dock workers. They looked soft, in cheap leather jackets, the kind of men who were dangerous only because they were stupid and desperate. "That is her," one of them said, pointing. "The girl from the union." Mariah froze. Her blood turned to ice. "Barlow Quinn's bookkeeper," the second one said, stepping in front of her. He was chewing gum, his jaw working. "You've been looking at things you should not, the Ridgecrest renewal books." "I do not know what you're talking about," Mariah said, her voice a thin, reedy thing she barely recognized. She tried to step around him. The third man, who had been silent, grabbed her arm. "He asks you a question. You answer." Leo, sensing her terror, let out a sharp, indrawn breath, the prelude to a scream. "Let go of me!" "You are going to come with us," the first man said, crowding her. "We are just going to talk, and you are going to give us what you took." A shadow detached itself from the deeper darkness of a building's alcove. "Her answer," a voice rumbled, "is no." The men spun around. Enzo Graziani was just there. He was not dressed for a fight. He wore the black wool overcoat from the other night, unbuttoned, his hands in his pockets. He looked calm. He looked bored. "Who the hell are you?" the gum chewer asked, trying to puff himself up. Enzo ignored him. His eyes were on the hand gripping Mariah's arm. "You have 1 second," he said, his voice dangerously soft, "to take your hand off her." The man let go as if her arm had burst into flame. "Now," Enzo said, taking a slow step forward, "you are going to turn around and walk away from this street, and you are never going to work for Barlow Quinn again, because if I see you, or hear of you, on my harbor after tonight, I will." The second man was the stupidest. He pulled a small, silver utility knife, the blade clicking out. "You are not." Enzo did not sigh, but his expression was one of profound disappointment. He moved. It was not a fight. It was a correction. He did not punch. He stepped inside the man's reach, his left hand deflecting the knife wrist, turning it. His right hand stiffened, struck the man's collarbone. There was a sickening, wet crack of bone. The man dropped the knife, his mouth a perfect O of silent, agonizing surprise. The first man, the one who had pointed, swung at Enzo's head. Enzo ducked under the clumsy punch, not even looking at him. He pivoted, his elbow catching the man under the ribs, and used the man's own momentum to spin him, sending him crashing into the third man. The two men collapsed into a heap of cheap leather and confusion. The one with the broken collarbone was weeping, clutching his shoulder. The entire event had taken less than 5 seconds. Enzo Graziani stood over them, fixing his cuff. He looked down at the two men on the ground. "Get him," he ordered, motioning to their injured friend, "and get out." The two men scrambled, dragging their friend, and ran, disappearing into the dark. The silence that descended was absolute, broken only by the distant sound of traffic and Mariah's own ragged breathing. She was shaking, her back pressed against the cold brick of the building, her legs about to give out. Enzo turned to her. He was breathing normally. He was not even flushed. He looked at her, his dark eyes cataloging her, her pale face, her wide, terrified eyes. "You are shaking," he said. He slipped off his heavy wool overcoat. The night air was cold, but he did not seem to notice. The coat was impossibly heavy, impossibly warm, and it smelled of him wool and rain and something clean and metallic. He draped it over her shoulders, pulling the lapels closed. His knuckles, cold from the night air, brushed the bare skin of her neck, just above her collar. A jolt, sharp and white-hot, shot straight down her spine. It was not sexual. It was pure, unfiltered electricity. She gasped. He froze. His fingers were still there, at her collarbone. He looked at her, his eyes suddenly dark with an emotion she could not name. The moment was shattered by a piercing wail. Leo, having held his breath in fear, finally let his terror out. Mariah, her hands still trembling inside the massive coat, fumbled with the sling. "Shh, mijo, shh, it is okay. Mama is here." "Let me," Enzo said, his voice thick. He did not wait for permission. He was all business, a different kind of efficiency now. He reached in, his hands sure and gentle. Unbuckling the sling, he lifted Leo out, and the baby, seeing a strange face, screamed louder. Enzo did not try to shush him. He simply shifted his grip. He turned Leo onto his stomach, his forearm supporting the baby's belly and chest, his hand cupping Leo's head, the classic football hold. He turned his back to the street, his broad shoulders a solid wall, shielding them both from the world, and began to walk. He walked slowly, his steps measured, and he began to make that sound, the low, rumbling hum from his penthouse. Leo's cries hiccuped, tapered off, and, within half a block, softened into a sleepy, confused murmur. The black sedan slid to the curb, Nico at the wheel, his face a grim mask. Enzo opened the back door, and Mariah got in, the heavy coat pooling around her. Enzo settled in beside her, still holding Leo in that secure, comforting grip. The baby was now fast asleep, his small face buried in the crook of Enzo's arm. The car was warm, silent. The distance between them was less than a handspan. Mariah could feel the heat radiating from his body. She was acutely aware of his breathing, of the size of him next to her, of the scent of rain that clung to him. She turned to look at him, to thank him. He was already looking at her. His gaze was not on Leo, it was on her. His eyes, dark and intense, were searching her face, checking for injuries, for fear, for something. The intensity of that look held her captive. It was no longer the look of a protector, or a boss, or a stranger. It was just a man, looking at a woman. The air in the car grew thick, heavy, charged with the unspoken terror of the last 5 minutes and the undeniable pull between them. He leaned in, just a fraction of an inch. She found herself leaning in, too. She was not thinking. She was just reacting to the safety, to the strength, to the jolting shock of his touch on her skin. His gaze dropped to her mouth. She could feel his breath, warm and close. Her lips parted, her eyes fluttered closed, her heart hammering a wild, frantic rhythm against her ribs. A tiny, wet, gurgling sound broke the spell. Leo, fast asleep, kicked his legs out in a dream, his tiny foot connecting squarely with Enzo's ribs. Enzo flinched, not in pain but in surprise. The magnetic tension shattered, replaced by startled reality. Mariah's eyes flew open. A breathless laugh, half sob, half giggle, escaped her. He kicked you." Enzo looked down at the sleeping baby, and then at her. A slow, breathtaking smile spread across his face. It was not the cold nod she was used to. It was a real smile, a crinkling at the corners of his eyes, a flash of warmth that lit his entire face. It was the most devastatingly attractive thing she had ever seen. He laughed, a low, husky sound. He has a strong right foot. The car fell silent again, but the tension was different, lighter. Enzo's smile faded, and he looked down at his hands, which were now resting, large and capable, in his lap. "I despise that," he said, his voice quiet. "The violence, it is a failure of planning, of foresight." He looked at her, his expression serious. "I use it like scissors, Mariah, only to cut, and only when I am forced." Mariah looked at this man who had just dismantled 3 men and then calmed her child with a hum. She thought of the laptop. She thought of the wolves. She had seen them now. She reached into the pocket of his coat, the one she was still wearing, and pulled out her phone. Her hands were almost steady. "While Leo slept," she said, her voice stronger now, "I kept looking. I drew you a map." She hit send on a file she had prepared. Enzo's phone buzzed in his pocket. He retrieved it, his eyes scanning the screen. It was a flowchart, a diagram. Olive Finch Holdings, Ridgecrest Renewal, the fake FCSU, all branching out from Barlow Quinn, with the container C-17 as the hub. It was a map of the money. "This is," he began. "It is proof," she said. "You know where they are. Pier Dory. You know what they are doing, but I need you to promise me something." He looked up from the phone, his face hardening, the boss returning, "What?" "No preemptive strikes. No scissors, not until you are sure. You cannot just go after them. That is not justice. That is what they do." He stared at her, this small, fierce woman in his oversized coat, who was trying to dictate terms to him in his own car, after he had just saved her life. "You're asking me to wait," he said, his voice flat, "even after they put their hands on you." "I'm asking you to be better than them," she whispered. A long, heavy silence filled the car. He looked from the phone to her and back. He saw the steel in her, a moral compass he himself had not consulted in years. He nodded, a slow, heavy gesture. I will not move on this without definitive proof of their next step. They will not be struck in the dark. He put his phone away. You have my honor on it. I did not go back to my apartment. After the attack in the street, the thought of sleeping behind that newly repaired door was impossible. Enzo had not argued. He had simply had Nico retrieve my few belongings and the new diaper bag. I was now a resident of the penthouse, a prisoner of its floor-to-ceiling windows and its silent, sterile luxury. We developed a strange, tense rhythm. I was not a guest. I was a protected asset, and I was working. By day, Leo would be in his bassinet, and I would be at the kitchen island with the air-gapped laptop, transformed into a digital detective. Enzo would be across the vast living room at his own desk, a silent, dark-clad partner, running his own empire through encrypted calls and terse messages. I kept digging. I was no longer just a bookkeeper, I was an archaeologist, and I was uncovering the bones of a sophisticated crime. The reference code, the one that linked the Olive Finch invoices to the Haven Union's off-book security payments, it was a string of 13 numbers. It had seemed random, but it was too consistent. On a hunch, I left the accounting portal and accessed the public-facing manifests for Pierre Dory. It was a poorly designed, archaic system, but it was public. I typed the 13-digit number from the last invoice into the booking reference field. My breath caught. It was not just an invoice number, it was a booking reference. For one specific shipping container, C-17. Every single time Barlow Quinn's fund, Ridgecrest Renewal, paid an invoice to his own shell company, Olive Finch, that exact container was booked for priority export. I went deeper. I found a misconfigured, unsecured folder on the Haven Union server, a place where a temp like me should never have been able to go. It was not just the FCSU certificates. It was a digital how-to kit for the entire racket. I found the demand letters. They were addressed to a dozen small businesses on the harbor, a refrigeration company, a rope supplier, a small fishery. The letters were on the fake Federal Commerce Security Unit letterhead. A recent audit has found your business in violation of FCSU Maritime Code 304B. They read, "You are required to purchase a compliance insurance policy in the amount of $10,000, payable to Olive Finch Holdings, or face daily fines of $5,000. It was extortion, pure and simple. They were threatening to fine these small businesses into oblivion, using a phantom federal agency as their boogeyman. And every letter was signed by Director May Lin. I found the signature file itself, tucked away in the folder, Maylin_Sig, PNG, a simple image file, ready to be copied and pasted onto any threat they wanted. I looked up from the screen, my heart hammering. Enzo was watching me. He knew I had found something. "They are not just laundering," I said, my voice hoarse. "They are running a protection racket. They are extorting the entire harbor, and they are using a fake federal agency to do it." I turned the laptop and showed him the file. He walked over, his presence sucking the air from the room. He leaned over my shoulder to read the screen. I could smell the faint, clean scent of his soap, see the fine stitching on the collar of his shirt. He read the demand letters in silence. When he was done, he did not look at the screen. He looked at the map of Pierre Dory I had sketched on a legal pad. "Pierre Dory," he said, his voice a low growl. "It is not my pier. It is run by a consortium that owes Quinn favors, and its equipment is ancient." He tapped the legal pad. "The scanners, they are from the 1990s. Useless. You cannot tell the difference between a container full of scrap metal and a container full of cash." I finished. His eyes met mine. That was it. They were not just laundering the money digitally. They were extorting cash from the harbor, loading that cash into container C-17, booking it as scrap metal, and shipping it overseas, perfectly clean, right under the nose of the legitimate Port Authority, whose outdated scanners on that pier could not tell the difference. Enzo moved away, retrieving his phone. He made a call, pacing in front of the window, a caged panther. He spoke in rapid, low Italian, his voice sharp with commands. I only understood 2 words, Nico and Ivy. He hung up and looked at me, his face calm, but his eyes were alive, burning with a cold fire. My honor prevents me from striking, he said. It does not prevent me from watching. What are you doing? Ivy and Nico have a new job. Tomorrow at 5 a.m., they are scheduled as port technicians. They are performing routine maintenance on the crane that services container C-17. You are putting a beacon on it, I whispered. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. A non-invasive, data-driven solution, just as you would prefer. That night, sleep was impossible. The weight of what we had found, of the danger I was in, pressed down on me. Leo was asleep in his bassinet, which we had moved next to the kitchen island. It was past 2 a.m. The city below was a galaxy of diamond chips. I was at the island, staring at the laptop. Enzo was there too, sitting across from me, reviewing reports on his own tablet. We were partners in the silence, 2 sleepless sentinels. You should sleep, he said, not looking up. So should you. He poured coffee from a thermal carafe into a black mug. He pushed it across the marble toward me. Drink. You are exhausted. I reached for it, my hand trembling slightly. He had placed it just out of my easy reach. As I slid it closer, my fingers brushed his. His hand was on the counter, steadying the cup. My small, pale fingers made contact with his larger, calloused ones. We both froze. It was nothing. It was everything. A simple, accidental touch, but it was like grounding a live wire, a static charge, slow and warm, hummed up my arm and settled directly in my chest. I could feel the rough texture of a scar on his knuckle, the solid warmth of his skin. A full, silent 5 seconds passed. The only sound in the vast, dark penthouse was the soft, even breathing of my son. I looked up. He was already looking at me. His dark eyes were not cold, not assessing. They were on my face, my mouth, and they were full of a raw, restrained heat that made my pulse jump into my throat. He pulled his hand back first, a slow, deliberate retraction. Be careful, he said, his voice husky, low. It is hot. He was not talking about the coffee. I wrapped my hands around the mug, the ceramic warm, but not as warm as his touch had been. Thank you, I whispered. The next morning, the trap was sprung. It did not come as a black van or a threatening note. It came as an email, arriving in my personal inbox at 9:07 a.m. The sender was Ridgecrest Renewal Human Resources. The subject line was Career Opportunity, Invitation to Interview. My blood ran cold. I opened it. Dear Miss Calderon, your supervisors at the Haven Union Temp Agency spoke very highly of your efficiency and attention to detail during your recent contract. Ridgecrest Renewal is expanding, and Mr. Barlow Quinn himself has requested we reach out to you personally about a permanent position in our auditing department. I scrolled down, my hand shaking. We know you are a new mother, and we are sensitive to the challenges of balancing work and family. We would like to invite you to our corporate offices tomorrow at 10 a.m. for an informal interview. We are pleased to offer complimentary, on-site childcare for your son, Leo, during your meeting. They knew my name. They knew Leo's name, and they were luring me in. They were using my greatest strength and my greatest vulnerability against me. They were using my son as bait. I showed the phone to Enzo. He read it, his face going utterly, terrifyingly blank. That was how I knew he was furious. The muscle in his jaw jumped. He stood up and walked to the window, his back to me. He was fighting his own promise, the one I had extracted from him. They are clever, he said, his voice tight. They offer a kindness to hide the cage. I have to go, I said. He spun around, his eyes flashing. Do not be a fool. It is a trap. I know, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. But if I run, if I hide, they will know I am the leak. They will never stop hunting me. They will never stop hunting my son. I have to go. I have to walk in. Pretend I am flattered and see what they want. It is the only way to know what they know. He stared at me, a long, agonizing silence stretching between us. He was at war with himself. He knew I was right. And he knew, because of his promise to respect my autonomy, that he could not forbid me. "You will not go alone," and he said, "Nico will be outside. They will be looking for a tail. They will see him." "He will not be seen," Enzo stated, his voice absolute. He walked back to me, his presence overwhelming. "You are walking into the wolf's den, Mariah. If they separate you from your phone, if they take you to a room and the door closes, you will not be able to call." He pressed a small, cold, flat metal disc the size of a quarter into my palm, a panic button. "But if you cannot reach it, you need a word my team will be listening for." He had a team. Of course he did. What do I say? If you are in danger, if you even feel the trap closing, find a way to say 2 words. Dory Bridge. Say it to the receptionist. Say it on a phone call to a wrong number. Say it aloud to yourself. My people will be listening. The second that phrase is spoken, the cavalry comes. Do you understand? "Dory Bridge," I repeated, my voice shaking. I closed my hand around the metal disc. He was about to say more, but his own phone buzzed on the counter. He glanced at it. It was a text from Ivy. He read it, and his face hardened. "The plan has changed," he said. "What Ivy is the beacon on?" "The beacon is on," he said, his eyes dark, fixed on something far beyond the window. "But they are moving. The manifest just updated. They are not waiting. They have booked a priority slot on a transport ship. It is scheduled to be loaded tomorrow night." He looked at me, the final piece clicking into place. "During the storm, they are using the weather to cover the loading, and your interview is tomorrow morning." The timeline had collapsed. The wolves were not just at the door. They were pulling me into the den, while their prize was being loaded onto a ship, ready to sail away forever. The night was suffocating. The plan for the interview with Barlow Quinn was set. I would go. I would wear a wire, so small it was woven into the bra Ivy had provided. I would carry the panic button. I would have the safe words, "Dory Bridge," locked in my mind. Nico would be my shadow. Enzo would be in a tactical van half a block away with Ivy, listening to every word. I felt like a lamb being dressed for slaughter, except this lamb was supposed to bite back. The tension in the penthouse was a living thing, a third person in the room. We ate dinner in silence, a meal prepared by Pilar that I could not taste. Leo was the only one at peace, asleep in his bassinet. The call came just as I was trying and failing to sleep. Pilar's voice on the intercom, thin and brittle. "Sir, there is a man downstairs. He is unruly. He says his name is Owen Krall. He says he is here for his son." My heart stopped, not in fear, in a cold, weary dread. Owen, Leo's biological father, a man who had disappeared 6 months before Leo was born, chasing a fantasy in another state, leaving nothing but bar tabs and broken promises. "He's here," I whispered, looking at Enzo. Enzo's face was unreadable. "Pilar, let him up." "Sir," Pilar's shock was audible. "He will make a scene in the lobby, and he will bring the police. We do not want the police. Send him up. Nico will meet him at the elevator." I stood in the middle of the vast living room, my hands clenched. This was my nightmare. The 2 parts of my life, the desperate past and the dangerous present, colliding. The elevator chimed. Nico escorted Owen in, holding his arm in a grip that was not gentle. Owen Krall was a ghost. He was thin, his eyes watery and bloodshot, his clothes smelling of stale cigarettes and failure. He was the human equivalent of the mold in my old apartment. He saw the room, the windows, the wealth, and then he saw me. His gaze was a mixture of shame and a greedy, calculating resentment. "Mariah," he said, his voice slick, You landed on your feet? Huh, real nice. What do you want, Owen?" I just wanted to see him," he said, trying to look past me to the bassinet. "See the kid, my son." "He's not your son," I said, my voice low and shaking. "You gave up that right." "Come on, Raya, do not be like that. I I am trying to get straight. I just need a little help, a little cash, for his sake. Enzo had not moved. He stood by the window, a statue carved from shadow, just watching. I have no money for you, Owen. That is not what I hear, Owen said, his eyes darting to Enzo. I hear you are connected. I hear you are in deep. I know, because I am too. My stomach clenched. What are you talking about? I got a job, he said, trying to puff up his thin chest. Temp work. Good money. Down at the Ridgecrest Renewal Project. The air left my lungs. Enzo was right. He was a variable. A catastrophic one. They know me, Owen continued, his voice dropping, trying to sound conspiratorial. They know I know you. They were asking questions. They know you were looking at the books. They pressured me. Mariah, they said you owed them money, that you stole files. They just wanted your bank account info. I told them I did not have it. He was lying. I could see it in the frantic, shifting gaze. He was looking for an angle, a way to sell this new piece of information to me, to Enzo. You sold me out, I whispered. The betrayal was so complete, so expected, it barely hurt. It was just a cold, hard fact. For a paycheck, you sold out your son. No, I did not. I was protecting you. That is enough, Enzo said. His voice was not loud, but it cut through Owen's whining like a razor. Owen flinched, as if he had only just realized the other man in the room was not just a piece of furniture. I looked at Enzo, my eyes stinging. Get him out, please. Get him out of here. I expected Nico to move, to grab him. Enzo did not move. He just looked at Owen with a kind of clinical pity. You did not just talk to your new employers. Owen, you were proactive. Enzo held up his phone. You tried to call Barlow Quinn's office, but you got his direct line. He did not answer, so you left a message, this morning, from a burner phone you bought at a gas station on Route 9. He pressed play. Owen's voice, reedy and desperate, filled the silent, expensive room. Mr. Quinn, sir, this is Owen Krall. Yeah, Mariah's the father. Listen, I know where she is. She is with Graziani in his penthouse. I can get her out. I can get the kid, but it's got to be worth my while. I need 10 grand. Cash, I can... Enzo stopped the recording. I stared at Owen, my vision blurring. He was not just a failure. He was a snake. He had tried to sell his own child. Owen's face was the color of ash. That is not... Nico, Enzo said. Nico moved, grabbing Owen by the arm. You will be escorted from this building, Enzo said, his voice flat and cold. You will never come near her again. You will never speak her name. My lawyer, Thaddeus Crow, will be in touch with Ridgecrest Renewal. He will also be in touch with the Kingsmouth police regarding this recording, which is a clear conspiracy to commit kidnapping. No, wait, Owen panicked. Please. However, Enzo continued, if you are on a bus to any state that does not border New Jersey within the next 2 hours, Mr. Crow might be persuaded to file that report in a different jurisdiction, one that may not be as efficient. The choice is yours. Nico did not wait for an answer. He dragged Owen, who was now weeping. I'm sorry, Mariah, I am sorry. Out of the room. The elevator chimed. The door closed. Silence. I was shaking, my entire body vibrating with rage and a sickening, hollow grief. I turned on Enzo. You knew, I yelled, my voice cracking. You knew he was working for them. You let him come up here. I knew he was a variable, Enzo said, his voice calm, but his eyes intense. I did not know when or how he would make his move. Letting him come up here was the fastest way to neutralize him, to get the truth, my past, my humiliation. You did not ask me. You just handled it, like you handle the broken heater, like you handle the men in the street. You just make a call, you play a recording, and you make my problems disappear. I am protecting you, he roared, his own control finally snapping. The sheer force of his voice made me flinch. "You are controlling me," I sobbed, tears of fury streaming down my face. "This is not your life. It is not your son. You do not get to decide who I see or what I do. You said, you promised, you would respect my choices." The anger in his face died, replaced by something I could not read. He held up his hands, palms forward. He took a physical step back. "You're right," he said, his voice quiet again. "I apologize. It is your life, your choice." He looked away, running a hand over his face. "This is not my area of expertise. My instinct is to build a wall, to eliminate the threat." He looked back at me, his eyes raw. "I admit I am jealous, not of him, never of him, but of anything that can hurt you, anything that poses a threat to you or to Leo. It is a flaw. I see a threat. I remove it. I did not stop to ask you how you wanted it handled. It will not happen again." His honesty was a physical blow. It took all the air out of my anger, leaving me exposed, trembling. The adrenaline from the confrontation drained away, leaving only the deep, aching exhaustion of the last week. Leo was asleep in the bassinet, just feet away, a small, perfect, peaceful presence in the storm. I stepped toward Enzo. He watched me, wary. I stopped in front of him, so close I could feel the heat coming off his body. "Stop trying to fix my life," I whispered. My hand was shaking, but I lifted it. I laid it flat against his chest, right over his collarbone, where I had seen the formula stain. I could feel the solid, steady beat of his heart under my palm, a counter rhythm to my own frantic pulse. I felt his breathing, a slow, deep, controlled inhale and exhale. He went perfectly still. His gaze dropped to my hand on his chest, then lifted, locking with mine. He did not move. He did not touch me. He waited. "Is this okay?" he asked. His voice was thick, a low, rough gravel. I could not find my voice. I just nodded, my eyes never leaving his. He tilted his chin down, and I rose on my toes. The kiss was not a collision. It was a landing. It was slow, tentative at first, then deepened, a long, silent conversation. His lips were firm, warm, and sure. It was not a kiss of desperation, but of profound, undeniable recognition. My hand slid from his chest up to his shoulders, my fingers gripping the hard muscle through his shirt. His hands came up, large and warm, to rest on my waist. They did not pull me, did not grab me. They just held me, steadying me, as if I were something precious. The world narrowed to this one point, his touch, his taste, the solid wall of his chest, and the sound of my son's soft breathing in the background, a quiet anchor to reality. I pulled back first, breathless, my forehead coming to rest against his chest. I could feel his heart hammering now, matching mine. "Enzo," I whispered, my voice muffled by his shirt. We cannot, not until this is over. With Quinn." "I know," he rumbled, his voice vibrating through me. "I know." He did not pull me closer, but he did not let me go. "We protect the objective, and," he added, his voice softer, "we respect each other's choices." He stepped back then, putting a careful, respectful distance between us. The air was still charged, but the boundary was set. The next morning, Thaddeus Crow arrived, immaculate in a $3,000 suit, his face a polite mask. He did not bring apologies. He brought solutions. "Miss Calderon," he said, offering me a pen and a document. "This is a temporary civil restraining order against Mr. Owen Krall, based on his recorded threat of kidnapping, which I forwarded to the appropriate channels. A judge signed it this morning. He's legally barred from coming within 500 feet of you or your son." I signed the paper. My hand was steady. When Thaddeus left, I sat on the dove-gray sofa, and I cried. I cried for the wasted, pathetic man Owen was. I cried in relief that he was gone, and I cried in guilt for feeling that relief. Enzo did not try to comfort me. He did not touch me. He sat in the chair across from me, a silent, solid witness. He just let me break and let me put myself back together, his presence an unspoken promise that I was not alone. The call came later that afternoon. It was from Ivy. The interview with Quinn was still on for the next morning, but Thaddeus needed to see us to finalize the legal side of what we were about to do. We had to move to a different safe house to meet him. Nico drove. The armored sedan was quiet. The city slipping past in the rain. I was in the back. Leo asleep in his car seat beside me. Enzo was in the passenger seat, a silent, watchful silhouette. We were stopped at the intersection at Kingsmouth Bypass and 12th, a black SUV, new, with tinted windows dark enough to be illegal, sat in the turning lane next to us. It looked like the kind of vehicle government agents drove in movies. The light turned green. Nico accelerated, his movements smooth and practiced. The SUV, instead of turning, shot forward. It swerved violently. Its reinforced steel bumper aimed directly at my door. "Enzo!" I screamed, throwing myself over Leo's car seat. Time slowed. I heard the roar of the SUV's engine, the high-pitched squeal of tires. Nico did not brake. He yanked the wheel to the right, a violent, professional maneuver. Our sedan, heavy as it was, jumped the curb, the chassis groaning as it slammed onto the sidewalk, missing the impact by a fraction of an inch. The black SUV did not slow. It did not stop. It blasted through the red light and disappeared. Silence in the car, broken only by Leo's sudden, terrified wail. My heart felt like it was trying to escape my chest. Enzo turned in his seat. His face was pale, his eyes black holes of a rage so cold it was terrifying. He looked at me, then at Leo, his gaze checking us for damage. "They know your name," he said, his voice deadly quiet, each word a chip of ice. "And they know my car." The interview was no longer a trap. It was a declaration of war. We did not go back to the penthouse. The armor-plated sedan, its chassis groaning from the curb jump, sped through the rainy streets to a different location. This was not a glass tower. It was a concrete bunker, a former bank building converted into a private stronghold, windowless on the ground floor, its upper windows reinforced. This was not a residence. It was a war room. The interview with Barlow Quinn was, of course, off. The failed attack with the SUV had changed the rules. The pretense of civility was gone. The first blow of the new war landed the next morning, not with a bullet, but with a blog post. Ivy was the one who found it. She walked into the main room, a converted vault where I was trying to feed Leo, her face grim. She held a tablet out to Enzo. "It is on Kingsmouth Confidential," she said, her voice tight. "It is a trashy site, but it gets traffic, and the established news outlets are picking it up." Enzo took the tablet. I stood and looked over his shoulder. The headline was designed to sting harbor temp and unstable mother accused of massive data theft. Below it was a picture. My picture. It was me, holding Leo, on the street outside my old apartment. But they had cropped it, zoomed in, made the image grainy and dark. It looked illicit, secretive, as if I were engaged in a back-alley transaction, using my son as a shield. The article, anonymous, cited concerned sources at Haven Union. It painted me as a disgruntled, unreliable employee, a single mother struggling with personal issues, who had stolen confidential client data. It was a classic smear, designed to destroy my credibility before I could ever speak a word. "They are defining me," I whispered, the blood draining from my face. "They are making me the criminal." "It is a political move," Enzo said, his voice a low, cold vibration. "They failed to remove you physically. Now they will remove your voice." The second blow came an hour later. It was more precise. It was aimed directly at my heart. A courier, buzzed in by Nico, delivered a thick, official-looking envelope. It was not addressed to Enzo. It was addressed to me. I opened it with shaking hands. The letterhead was heavy, embossed, Child Welfare Compliance Bureau. My knees went weak. I gripped the table. "What is it?" Enzo demanded. It is. It is another one, I stammered, holding it out. Like your FCSU. It is another fake agency. He read the letter. It was chillingly professional. It stated that an anonymous and deeply concerned report had been filed regarding the welfare of my son, Leo Calderone. It cited allegations of an unstable home environment, association with known criminal elements, and reckless endangerment. It concluded by informing me that 2 field assessors from the Bureau would be arriving at my last known address, my old apartment, the following morning at 10 a.m. to conduct an emergency environmental assessment. And then, the final lethal sentence. Failure to comply will result in the immediate placement of the minor child into protective custody, pending a full hearing. I dropped the letter. They are coming for him, Enzo. They are going to take my son. I was hyperventilating. This was my deepest terror, the one that lived beneath all the others. Enzo caught me before I fell. He gripped my shoulders, his hands like steel clamps. Mariah, look at me! I could not. I was sobbing, a raw, panicked sound. Breathe, he commanded. He gave me a small, hard shake. They will not touch him. Do you hear me? They will not touch him. He did not yell. His voice was a blade of ice. This was not the man who had softened at the touch of my hand. This was the man who owned the harbor. He released me and turned, grabbing his phone. He did not call Nico. He called his lawyer. Thaddeus, he said, pacing the concrete floor. They are deploying a phantom agency, Child Welfare Compliance Bureau. They are threatening to seize her son tomorrow at 10. He listened. No, we do not block them. We welcome them. I looked up, my eyes blurred with tears. What? Enzo turned to me, his eyes burning with a cold, tactical fury. They are using the dark. They are expecting you to be alone. They are expecting you to panic, to run, so they can claim you are unstable. He turned back to the phone. Thaddeus, deploy the syndicate. I want a full transparency detail. Call Councilman Alito. Call Sarah Jensen at the Herald, the real Herald, not that trash blog. And I want 2 observers from the actual State Department of Child Services. Tell them we welcome their oversight in investigating this fraudulent claim. We will flood that room with so much light. The cockroaches will have nowhere to hide. He hung up. The Civic Mediation Syndicate, he explained, is a legal fund I established. It fights exactly this bureaucratic intimidation. They will still come, I whispered. No, Enzo said. They will not. Their fake assessors will not show up to a meeting with 2 city councilmen and a real journalist. He was right by noon. Thaddeus called back. The Child Welfare Compliance Bureau had called my old landlord, canceling the assessment, citing a scheduling error. The immediate threat was gone, but the smear was not. The poison was still out there. I'm not hiding, I said. Enzo looked up from a laptop. What? I'm not staying in this bunker. They put my face on the internet. They called me a thief. They called me an unfit mother. I am not going to let that be the only thing people hear. I turned to Nico. I'm going to the Seabright Community Kitchen. I'm volunteering for the dinner shift. Tonight. Absolutely not, Enzo said, standing. You promised, I said, my voice shaking but firm. You promised to respect my choices. This is my choice. They attacked me at the kitchen. They smeared me as a mother. I am going back to the one place in this city that has only ever helped me, and I am going to do it in the light. He stared at me, the war in his eyes visible. He was warring with his promise, with his instinct to lock me in this vault. He lost. Ivy, he barked. You are on her. You and 2 of your team. Low profile. You do not let her out of your sight. The kitchen was busy. The local news was already there. A Channel 4 van parked outside, alerted by the smear piece. As I walked in, a reporter rushed me, shoving a microphone in my face. Miss Calderone, is it true you stole data from Haven Union? What do you say to the allegations that you are an unfit mother? I stopped. I looked straight into the camera, my heart hammering. I was not the terrified girl from the alley. Not anymore. My name is Mariah Calderon, I said, my voice clear, ringing through the basement. I am a single mother. For the last year, I have worked 2 jobs to keep my son fed and warm. I was climbing out of debt, honestly. And while I was working, I saw something. I saw wealthy, powerful men stealing from this harbor, extorting small businesses, using fake government agencies to do it. The reporter's face changed. This was not the story she expected. They did not like that I saw, I continued, my voice rising. So they sent men to attack me in the street. They tried to run me off the road, and when that did not work, they called me a thief. They tried to use my son to silence me. I pointed at the camera. I am not a thief. I am not an unfit mother. I am a citizen of Kingsmouth, and I will not be silent while they rob us. The people in line, the volunteers, the people I had seen every Thursday, began to clap. A few shouted, "Leave her alone!" The reporter looked flustered. Ivy stepped in, guiding me away. "That is enough," she murmured. When we returned to the safe house, Enzo was standing by a monitor, watching the footage from the news. He did not turn around, but I saw his reflection in the dark screen. He was watching my speech, his face a mask of grim, profound pride. The silence was broken by Ivy. She'd been at her own terminal, her fingers flying. "Boss," she said, her voice strained, "we have a new problem." "They will escalate," Enzo said, still watching the screen. "No, we have an old problem. I found the leak." Enzo spun around. "What?" "The SUV," Ivy said, standing. "They knew our route. They knew we were moving from the penthouse. They knew about Leo. Only a handful of people knew how much of a priority the child was. Only my team, Nico, Thaddeus, and your inner circle." Enzo's face turned to stone. "Who? Ivy." "The SUV that hit you. It was parked 2 blocks from the penthouse for 1 hour before you left. They were tipped off. I ran every outgoing communication from your network in that time frame. 1 burner phone pinged a cell tower near the SUV just before you left." "Trace the phone," Enzo commanded. "I did," Ivy said, and she looked sick. "It routes to an encrypted account, an account I recognize. It belongs to Ilya Corvino." The name hung in the air. Ilya, Enzo's right hand, his Cugino, his family. "That is impossible," Enzo said, his voice hollow. "He wants Pierre Dory," Ivy said, her voice flat. "Barlow Quinn has been promising it to him for 6 months. If he could find a way to get you out of the harbor, Quinn must have told him about me, about Leo. Ilya fed them your movements. He fed them the angle about your son. He was selling you out to get his own Pierre. The betrayal was total." Enzo said nothing. He just walked to the window and stared out at the brick wall of the next building, his shoulders rigid. Thaddeus arrived an hour later, stepping into the middle of the heavy, toxic silence. He, as always, was focused on the objective. "It is done," he announced. "Your speech at the kitchen, Miss Calderon, has gone viral locally. The small businesses that the FCSU was extorting are talking. They are angry. They are ready to testify." "Testify where?" I asked. "The North Shore Harbor Authority is holding its quarterly public hearing. Next week, it is usually a boring affair about tariffs and dredging." Thaddeus smiled, a thin, reptilian expression. "I have just secured a 30-minute presentation slot. For you, you are going to present your findings, all of them, to the board and to the press. The final battle would not be in an alley. It would be at a podium." That night, Enzo was a ghost. He was processing Ilya's betrayal. He ordered a new security detail for the door. 4 men. "No," I said. He looked at me, his eyes dead. "Do not argue with me on this, Mariah, not now." "I am not arguing," I said. "I am correcting. Ilya knows your soldiers. He knows their faces, their rotations. That is how he will get to us. I do not want your soldiers." "What do you want?" "I want Ivy," I said. "I want her to lead the team, her and her technicians, the people Ilya does not know, the ones he underestimates." Enzo looked at Ivy. She gave a small, confident nod. "It is a heart's command, boss," she said, using the old phrase. He nodded, weary. Done. Ivy has the door. Later, long after midnight, the storm that had been threatening for days finally rolled in, lashing the concrete building with rain. I could not sleep. I found Enzo standing by the reinforced window, staring into the deluge. "I need air," he said, his voice rough. With Ivy and Nico as a full escort, we went to the roof. It was a secure, walled-in space. The wind was so strong it stole my breath. In the distance, the beam of the Kingsmouth Lighthouse cut through the rain. Near the ledge, there was a simple granite wall, polished and dark, with names etched into it. "What is this?" I shouted over the wind, holding Leo tight inside my coat. Enzo did not answer. He just walked to it and laid his bare hand on one name, Elara Graziani. "Your sister," I whispered, the wind ripping the words away. "This is the Harbor Light Memorial," he shouted back, his voice thick. "She died fighting these people. Quinn was just starting then. He cut her program's funding, he smeared her in the press, just like he did to you. She tried to fight him in the light, and it broke her." He turned to face me, the rain plastering his black hair to his head. I kept the port watch number alive to catch the people she missed, but I did it in the dark. I used the shadows. I became the thing she hated, just to protect her memory. He reached out, his hand dripping wet, and his glove brushed Leo's sleeping face. "But you," he said, his voice raw. "You did what I was afraid to do. You did what she did. You went to the kitchen. You faced the camera. You fought them in the light." He turned back to the wall, to his sister's name, and then to the roaring, angry sea. "I promise you, Mariah, I promise you, Elara, after that hearing, there will be no more shadows. I am cleaning this harbor, for good." It was a vow, made to his past and to his future, with the sea as his witness. The night before the hearing, the storm outside the safe house was a physical thing. It was a siege of wind and water, a howling that matched the tension inside the concrete walls. Leo was finally asleep in the guest room, a small, perfect silence in the heart of the noise. I found Enzo in the main room, the converted vault, staring at a blank monitor as if it held all the answers. The betrayal by his cousin Ilya had settled on him, a heavy, suffocating weight. "I could not sleep," I said. "He did not turn. He was my father's godson. He ate at my table. He held my sister's casket. Why Enzo? Why would he do it?" "Pure Dory," he said, his voice hollow. He always wanted his own territory. He was tired of the shadows. Quinn promised him legitimacy. He finally turned, his face etched with a weary self-loathing. "I am the one who kept him in the shadows. I am the one who made him vulnerable to Quinn's promises. You are not responsible for his greed." "Am I not?" he countered, his voice rough. "When Elara died, I saw what the light did. It got her killed. Barlow Quinn used the press and the city council to bleed her program dry, to paint her as incompetent. He destroyed her. And when she was gone, I made a vow. I would never let them do that to anyone else. I kept the port watch number, but I ran it my way. The wardens. I used the dark. I used fear. I built a wall of shadows because I believed the light was a trap." He looked at me, his eyes full of the storm. I became the man she hated, just to protect her memory. And I dragged Ilya down there with me. I taught him that shadows were the only way. "You also saved my son," I said, my voice quiet. "Your shadows, your network. It saved Leo's life. It is not that simple." "Is it not?" he said, stepping closer. You were exactly what she was. Desperate, honest, cornered, and you did the one thing I was too afraid to do. You walked into that soup kitchen, you faced those cameras, and you used the light, you used the truth as a weapon. And you did not break. The raw confession hung in the air between us. He had admitted his deepest failure. Now it was my turn. "You are wrong," I whispered. "I was broken. I have been broken for a long time." He frowned. "Mariah, you think I was strong. I was terrified. The night I texted you, Leo could not breathe, and I was sitting there, arguing with myself about the cost of an ambulance. But it was not just the money. I looked down, the shame of it still sharp. I was afraid of help. I do not understand. When you are a single mother, Enzo, with no family and no money, help is the most dangerous word in the world. Help is a social worker who sees your empty refrigerator and decides you are an unfit mother, takes your child. Help is a landlord who offers to forget the rent, but not for free. Help, I said, my voice bitter, is a man like Owen Crawl who sees a child as a bargaining chip. I learned to refuse. I learned that doing it all myself, exhausted, cold, hungry, was safer. It was the only way to guarantee no one could ever get leverage, the only way to ensure I would never, ever lose my son. I looked up at him, the tears hot in my eyes. I was so tired. I was so tired of being strong. I let my son sleep in the cold because I was too proud and too terrified to let anyone in. I did not text your number because I was strong. I texted it because I had finally, completely hit the bottom. The silence in the room was absolute. He just watched me, his expression unreadable, his own pain momentarily forgotten, eclipsed by mine. He stepped closer, closing the small distance between us. We were standing by the reinforced window, the rain lashing against the thick glass, a frantic drumming. He did not touch me. He just stood there, breathing my air. "Mariah," he said, just my name. It was not a statement. It was a question. It was permission. I could not speak. I just nodded, a small, jerky movement. My entire body was trembling. His hands, large and warm, came up, but they did not grab me. They settled gently on my waist, his thumbs resting just above my hips, his touch a question. He was giving me every chance to back away. I stepped into him. My hands came up, not knowing what to do, and I laid them on his chest, feeling the solid, steady beat of his heart. I leaned in, resting my forehead against his throat, in that perfect hollow. I could feel his pulse hammering against my skin. He tilted my chin up with one finger. His eyes searched mine, asking one last time. And then he kissed me. It was not the near miss in the car, charged with adrenaline and fear. This was slow. It was deep. It was a confession. It was the taste of the storm, and of safety, and of a profound, aching loneliness that I recognized because it was my own. His lips were firm, and sure, and devastatingly gentle. My hands slid from his chest up to his shoulders, my fingers gripping the hard muscle. His hands tightened on my back, pulling me flush against him, and I went, melting into his strength. He was a fortress. He was solid ground. He broke the kiss, but only to rest his forehead against mine, his breathing ragged. "You are not broken," he whispered, his voice thick. "You are the strongest person I have ever known." He slid his hands from my back, down my arms, lacing his fingers with mine. Then, in one smooth, powerful movement, he slid his hands back to my waist, dipped, and lifted me. I gasped, my feet leaving the floor. He spun me, just once, a slow, weightless circle in the eye of the storm. It was not a gesture of passion, it was a gesture of adoration, of lifting a burden. He set me down gently, my body still pressed against his. I was shivering. The draft from the window was cold, raising goosebumps on my arms, but my skin was on fire where he touched me. My heart was a frantic drum, beating against his... He held me, his arms wrapped around me, his chin resting on the top of my head, and we just stood there, listening to the rain and the sound of our breathing, finally in rhythm. After a long time, he took my hand and led me to the sofa. We sat, but we did not break contact. I curled up, my head resting on his shoulder, his arm a heavy, secure weight around me. We were still fully clothed. It was not about that. It was about this, the quiet, the safety. "What happens after tomorrow?" I whispered into his shirt. He was silent for a moment. "After tomorrow, we win. And then, we live. I used to dream, I murmured, about an apartment, not a fancy one, just one with 2 bedrooms and a window that gets the morning sun. I wanted a small patch of grass. In one of those community gardens. I wanted to put Leo in a preschool, one with paint on the walls and those little tables. He will have it, Enzo said, his voice a low rumble against my ear. He will have the garden and the paint, I promise you. We sat like that for hours, saying nothing, the silence more intimate than any touch. We drifted, not quite asleep, in a truce with the world, a moment of profound, longed-for peace. The morning was cold and gray. The peace was gone, replaced by a sharp, metallic focus. We were in the vault, the tactical team assembled. Thaddeus, Ivy, Nico, Enzo, and me. Ivy was at the main monitor, running through the presentation I had built, the money map, the fake FCSU letters, the audio file of Owen Krall's betrayal, the testimony from the other small businesses. Thaddeus, Enzo said, all business. You will present the findings, your legal language will give it the weight it needs. No, I said. Enzo turned to me. This is not a legal argument. Enzo, not yet. This is a story, my story, your sister's story. It is what they did to me, what they did to those business owners. I looked around the room. They smeared my name. They tried to take my son. They will not hear this from a lawyer. They will hear it from me. They will look at my face when I tell them what Barlow Quinn did. Enzo studied me, the hard lines of the boss softening. He saw the woman from last night. He saw the mother from the soup kitchen. He nodded. Once. You are right, he said. It is your story. You will be the voice. He stepped back, moving into the shadows of the room, a familiar comfort to him. I will be the shield. I will be on that stage, in the front row. No one will get near you. We were finalizing the plan, the last details, when Enzo's phone buzzed on the table. A text from an unencrypted, unknown number. He picked it up. His face went blank, then cold. Boss? Ivy asked, sensing the shift. He turned the screen so we could all read it. The message was short. Good luck at the hearing tomorrow. A shame you do not know that 2 members of the Harbor Authority Board are on Quinn's payroll. You are walking into a slaughter. Ilya. The air went out of the room, a betrayal, and now a final poison knife. Is he lying? I asked, my voice small. It does not matter if he is, Thaddeus said, his face grim. He has poisoned the well. He's trying to spook us, to make us pull the presentation. My hands felt cold. He can just buy them. We present all of this and they will just vote no. The confidence, the strength, the hope from last night, it all shriveled. We were walking into a fixed fight. I stood there, staring at the screen, at Ilya's casual, cruel words. I felt Ivy's hand on my arm. I looked up. Her face was hard, focused. Do not let him win, Mariah, she said, her voice low and fierce. This is not about the board, not entirely. He wants you to be silent. He wants you to run. But, Ivy, if the vote is bought, the board is not the only audience, Ivy cut in. The press will be there. The other business owners will be there. The union will be there. The truth needs a storyteller. You just get on that stage and you tell your story. Tomorrow is yours. Let us worry about the votes. I looked from Ivy's determined face to Enzo, who was watching me, his expression unreadable, but his eyes were full of a terrible, cold fire. He would be the shield. I took a deep breath. I nodded. Tomorrow. The storm hit just after midnight, a full-on assault of wind and horizontal rain. The hearing was at 9 a.m. The safe house felt like a drum, the wind hammering a frantic rhythm against the concrete. Ivy was at her monitor, her face illuminated by the green and black glow of a tracking map. Boss, she said, her voice sharp, cutting through the howl of the wind. We have a problem, the beacon. Enzo was at her side in an instant. What? It is moving. C-17. It is leaving Pier Dory. Now, hours before the scheduled loading. It is a diversion, Enzo said, his voice flat. Ilya's text. He's trying to split our forces." "I do not think so," Ivy said, her fingers flying, bringing up a new screen. "Look, Port Authority cams. The truck is heavy. It just went over the preliminary scale. It is loaded. This is not a feint. The money or the factory or whatever is in it. It is moving tonight." Enzo stared at the screen. I saw the calculation in his eyes. Ilya's text was a lie, wrapped in a truth. It was a double blind. He was telling Enzo the hearing was a trap, hoping Enzo would pull his best people, Ivy and Nico, to protect the hearing, leaving the container free to escape. "He is playing us," Enzo growled. "He wins either way. If we let the container go, the evidence is gone. If we chase it, he hits you." He looked at me. "You have to get the container," I said, my voice shaking. "It is the proof. Without it, my speech is just words." Enzo nodded. The decision made. "Ivy, Nico, you are on the container. That is your only priority. Get me that truck. I will lead the wardens. We will cut them off at the bypass. I want them boxed." "Boss, what about Mariah?" Ivy asked, her eyes worried. "Thaddeus," Enzo barked, looking at his lawyer, who was already putting papers into a briefcase. "You, Pilar, and 2 of my men, the ones Ilya has never seen, will take Miss Calderon and Leo to the theater. You will use the service entrance. You will not leave her side." He turned to me, his face hard, his eyes full of the storm. "You are the primary objective, Mariah. Get in, tell your story, and get out. Do not deviate." He did not wait for an answer. He was gone, his team melting into the rain-swept night. The Old Port Theater was chaos. The storm had knocked out the main power grid. The building was running on the thrum of a single, straining emergency generator. The lobby was packed. Reporters, angry-looking longshoremen, nervous-looking men in suits, and the small business owners I had spoken to, all crowded in the dim, flickering light. "Backstage," Thaddeus murmured, his hand on my back. "This way." Pilar held Leo, who was blessedly asleep, wrapped tight in a blanket. We moved through a side corridor. As we approached the door to the stage, the lights did not just flicker, they died. The generator had failed. We were plunged into total, suffocating darkness, broken only by the dim red glow of the exit signs. A woman in the lobby screamed. Then, new lights, heavy-duty flashlights clicking on, blindingly bright. Shouts erupted from the main doors. Building is insecure power failure. I saw them through the door crack. Men, a dozen of them, wearing black windbreakers with the bright, purple-stamped logo of the FCSU. "The Federal Commerce Security Unit is securing the premises," one of them yelled. "For safety, all recording devices, all phones, all laptops must be surrendered." It was a raid, a legal-looking raid. They were not here to stop the hearing. They were here to seize the evidence. "Miss Calderon," Thaddeus said, his voice tense, trying to pull me toward the stage. "Ma'am, I need your bag." An FCSU goon was suddenly in front of us, his flashlight in my eyes. He was reaching for my laptop case. My heart stopped. The presentation, the map, the signatures, the recording of Owen. My mind went blank. I could not breathe. "She needs to change the baby," Pilar said, her voice like steel, stepping between me and the man. "The bag is for the child." "All bags," the man said, shoving her. "No," I said, my voice high. He needs a new diaper. I have to, please." It was the one thing that gave them pause, the mundane, panicked request of a mother. "Fine," the goon snarled. "Do it, then give me the bag." I turned my back, fumbling in the diaper bag. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely unzip it. The laptop was useless, but the backup, the small silver USB drive that Ivy had given me, was in a side pocket. My fingers closed around it. It was small, in the dark. I grabbed a spare, folded diaper with my back to the man. I jammed the USB drive deep into the thick cotton folds. "Here," I said, my voice trembling. I shoved the now useless laptop bag with the laptop still in it into Thaddeus's hands. "Hold this. Just hold him." I pushed Leo into his arms. What? Thaddeus was confused. Take the laptop, ma'am, the goon said. I am holding my son, Thaddeus snapped, playing along. You want the laptop, you get it. He dropped the bag at the goon's feet. The man cursed, bending to get it. This way, a new voice said. The door to the main dressing room opened. A man in an expensive suit stood there, and beside him, his face pale and set, was Ilya Corvino. My blood ran cold. Miss Calderone, Ilya said, his voice smooth. Mister, Barlow Quinn would like a word before you go on. It was a trap. Enzo was gone, Ivy was gone, I was alone. I was herded into the room. Barlow Quinn was sitting at a makeup vanity, a small battery-powered lantern on the table. He was older, with a soft pink face and dead reptilian eyes. So, this is the little mouse, he said, not bothering to stand. Ilya, you said you could handle this. You said you would deliver Graziani. He took the bait, Ilya said, his eyes on me. He's chasing the container. He is gone. This is the one you wanted, the storyteller. She is nothing, Quinn said. Give me the file. I do not have it, I stammered. It was on the laptop. Your man took it. Ilya sneered. Do not play dumb. He grabbed my arm. The backup. Where is it? Let her go. The voice came from the doorway. Every man in the room froze. Enzo stood there, soaked to the bone, his black coat dripping, his face a mask of such cold, controlled rage it was terrifying. He had not gone on the chase. He had known. He had known this was the real target. Quinn's eyes widened. Then he smiled, a slow, greasy spreading of his lips. Enzo, you came. You really are a fool. You should have let the girl take the fall. The hearing is in 10 minutes, Enzo said, his voice flat. This is over. Barlow, let her walk. Or what? Quinn laughed. He nodded to his two bodyguards, and to Ilya. You are outnumbered, and you, Ilya, you worthless. This was your chance. Take him. Ilya looked at Enzo. He looked at Quinn. He was trapped. Enzo looked at me. His eyes were not on Quinn. They were on me. I am the shield. Run. He took a step into the room, his hands spread wide. This is not about her, Barlow. It is about me. You know it. You want the harbor. You want me out. I am right here. You are surrendering? Quinn asked, disbelieving. I am trading, Enzo said, his voice hard. Me, for her and the child. Let them walk out that door, and I am yours. No wardens, no guns, my honor on it. Quinn stared at him. Then he laughed. A high-pitched, wheezing sound. Done. What a fool. What a romantic fool. He motioned to his men. Get him. Get him out of here. Take him to the car. Enzo, no, I screamed. His men grabbed him. Enzo did not fight, Sinai. He let them hold his arms. He just looked at me. Go. Mariah, tell the truth. They dragged him out a side exit. Ilya stood there, stunned. Well, Quinn said, brushing his suit. That solves that. Ilya, get rid of her. Make sure she does not make it to the stage. Quinn walked out, leaving me with Ilya. Ilya looked at me, his face a mask of conflict. He had won. He had gotten Enzo out of the way. All he had to do was stop me. I looked at him, and then I looked past him, at the stage door. Thaddeus was there, holding Leo. I have to change him, I whispered, my voice breaking. Ilya sneered. What? I stumbled, falling against Thaddeus. Give him to me. I have to change him. I took Leo from his arms. I grabbed the diaper bag, and I ran. Stop her, Ilya yelled, lunging. But I did not run for the exit. I ran for the stage manager's podium in the dark wings. I saw it a small, silver microphone on a gooseneck. The emergency public address system, battery-powered. I slammed my hand on the on switch. A deafening screech of feedback echoed through the entire theater. The crowd in the dark lobby yelled in surprise. I put my mouth to the mic. My name is Mariah Calderone, I screamed, my voice booming, amplified, spectral. Barlow Quinn is a thief. He's using a fake federal agency to steal from you. He is trying to silence me. He just took Enzo Graziani. "Turn that off," Ilya roared, running toward me. But then, a single, battery-powered stage light clicked on. It found Thaddeus. He walked out onto the center of the dark stage, holding Leo high on his chest, a lawyer, a baby, a symbol. The entire theater, packed with people, went dead silent. "You want proof?" my voice boomed. "Look at the screen." In the back of the theater, a laptop clicked on, the projector, on its own battery, backup, word to life, Ivy. She was here. She'd never been on the chase. She was my real shield. The giant screen above the stage lit up. First, the forged signature Mei Lin, a gasp from the crowd. Next, my money map, showing the flow from Quinn to Olive Finch to the fake FCSU. "He has been extorting us," a man in the crowd yelled. "That is the letter they sent me." "But where is the money?" a reporter shouted. "Here," a new voice called, Ivy, from the projection booth. "We have a live feed from Nico. He's on the container. C-17. The screen changed. It was shaky, dark. Dashcam footage. Rain lashed a windshield. We saw the back of a large shipping container on a truck bed. "They are not stopping," Nico's voice yelled over the speakers, tinny and full of static. "They are running the way station." On the screen, we watched the truck, C-17, plow through a flimsy barrier arm at a way station. It swerved, trying to avoid a set of concrete barriers. It was going too fast. The cab jackknifed. The container slid, tipped in slow motion, and slammed into the side of the way station building. The back doors burst open. It was not money. It was not scrap metal. It was a factory. Thousands of black windbreakers, printed with the purple FCSU logo, spilled out onto the wet pavement. Stacks and stacks of Child Welfare Compliance Bureau letterhead, boxes of official-looking binders, spools of holographic seals, and, tumbling last, dozens of small, wooden-handled rubber stamps. The crowd in the theater saw it. They looked at the screen. They looked at the panicked FCSU goons in the lobby, wearing the exact same jackets. It was not a scam. It was an industry, and we had just blown the factory wide open. The chaos in the theater was absolute. The crowd was on its feet, shouting, pointing at the goons in the FCSU jackets, who were now trapped between the exits and the damning evidence on the projector screen. From the side of the stage, Barlow Quinn reappeared. His soft, civilized mask was gone. His face a purple mask of rage. He was ruined, and he knew it. He pulled a heavy, silver revolver from a holster hidden beneath his suit jacket. "You!" he screamed, not at the crowd, but at the stage, at Thaddeus, who was frozen, still holding Leo high on his chest. "You worthless slut! You ruined me!" He leveled the gun. Time stopped. I saw a black shape explode from the side door where Enzo had been dragged. He had never been taken. The trade was a diversion. He hit the two guards holding the door in a blur of motion, a brutal, efficient disabling of knees and throats. He launched himself across the stage just as Quinn fired. The sound of the gunshot was deafening, a cannon blast that echoed through the theater, silencing the crowd. I screamed. Enzo had thrown himself, not in front of me, but in front of Thaddeus, a human shield for my son. He hit the floor, skidding on the polished wood. He did not get up. He just looked at me. I did not panic. I did not run. I grabbed the live microphone. "That is the real Mafia," I shouted, my voice booming, ringing with a clarity I did not know I possessed. I pointed at Quinn, who was staring at his gun, stunned. "Portwatch is not the Mafia. The Mafia are the men in suits, the men who wear fake badges like the FCSU, the men who try to steal your children, the men who steal from this community." As if summoned by my voice, the main doors of the theater burst open. This time, it was not fake agents. It was blue uniforms, Kingsmouth police, backed by the Harbor Patrol, swarming in, their weapons drawn. "Barlow Quinn, drop the weapon, you are under arrest." Thaddeus, ever the planner, had timed the official warrant service to coincide with our presentation. The FCSU goons in the lobby dropped their flashlights and put their hands on their heads. It was over. I saw a blur of motion near the back. Ivy Sloane, dropping lightly from the projection booth where she had been running the show, landed silently behind Ilya Corvino. He had been trying to slip out in the chaos. She applied a clean, non-violent submission lock, forcing him to his knees, his face a mask of disbelief. "Nico has Mei Lin," Ivy said into her wristcom. "She was driving the truck. She is cooperating." Barlow Quinn, his face ashen, let the revolver clatter to the wooden stage. He was cuffed. The crowd erupted, cheers, whistles, the flash of real news cameras, capturing the end of his reign. I ran to Enzo, and he was pushing himself up, his face pale. His left hand pressed hard against his right shoulder. A dark, wet stain was spreading through the fabric of his black coat. "It is a scratch," he breathed, but he was swaying. "Mariah, is Leo—" "He is safe," I said, my voice thick. I grabbed the heavy wool scarf from my own neck and pressed it, hard, against the wound. "I have got you. Stay with me." He leaned his weight on me, his head dropping, his forehead coming to rest against mine. We stood there, in the middle of the noise and the flashing lights, breathing the same air, the shield finally resting on the one he had protected. "You promised," I whispered, my voice thick with tears. "No scissors." He looked at me, his eyes dark with pain but clear. "The truth," he rasped. "You were the weapon, not me. I kept my word." Thaddeus was already at the podium, his voice cutting through the din. "The Harbor Light Fund," he announced, which Mr. Graziani has funded privately for years in his sister's memory, will be reorganized, effective immediately. It is a fully public community trust dedicated to providing legal aid and housing assistance for single mothers in Kingsmouth. The cheer that went up shook the foundations of the old theater. The rain was still pouring when the ambulance arrived. The flashing red and blue lights painted the wet street, a chaotic watercolor. I was holding Leo, who was now awake, his big, dark eyes wide, taking in the world. Ivy had already put a field dressing on Enzo's shoulder. It was a clean through and through. He would be fine. They were loading him onto a gurney. I had to stop him. "Wait," I said to the EMT. I stepped up to him. He was pale, lying back, but his eyes were fixed on me. Leo, sensing the connection, reached out his tiny, starfish hand. He did not touch Enzo's face. His small fingers grazed the white bandage on Enzo's good hand. "Stay," I said. The rain was cold, plastering my hair to my face. The words tumbled out, fast, breathless, leaving no room for a negotiation. "Stay, with me, with us, no conditions, no trade, no more boundaries, just stay." Enzo looked at me, at my son, at my hand, which was gripping the cold metal rail of the gurney. A slow, painful, utterly radiant smile spread across his face, lighting up the stormy night. "I keep my word, Mariah," he said, his voice rough. He reached up his good hand, the uninjured one, and laced his fingers tight with mine. "I am your shield, always." He did not pull me to him. He pulled my hand to his lips and pressed a kiss there, a deep, warm seal against my skin. It was not a kiss of passion. It was a kiss of permanence. It was a vow, sealed in the middle of the storm as the sirens wailed, promising a new and quiet morning. The fallout was swift. Barlow Quinn was prosecuted, with the testimony of a dozen small business owners, the confession of Mei Lin, and the irrefutable evidence from container C-17. He was convicted on 27 counts of extortion, fraud, and racketeering. His assets, including Olive Finch Holdings and Ridgecrest Renewal, were seized. The Civil Mediation Syndicate, led by Thaddeus, filed a massive class action lawsuit on behalf of the harbor community and won. The fake agencies were exposed as hollow shells, resulting in 3 state senators being recalled. Life did not just go back to normal, it moved forward. The Harbor Light Fund gave me its first official scholarship. I started classes in forensic accounting. I was going to hunt men like Quinn, but I was going to do it with a calculator, Not a gun. Enzo, true to his word, stepped out of the shadows. He used his influence to turn Pier Dory, the center of the corruption, over to the Kingsmouth Fishermen's Co-op. He was still the most powerful man on the harbor, but he was no longer the most feared. 6 months later, in the new apartment, the one with 2 bedrooms, the one with the morning sun, I was packing a lunch. Leo, now sturdy on his feet, was learning to run. He took 3 wobbly steps on the sun-drenched wooden floor, his arms out for balance. He giggled, stumbled, and fell forward. I moved to catch him, but Enzo was faster. He was sitting on the floor, reading the paper, and he dropped it, opening his arms. Leo fell right into his chest, burying his face in Enzo's simple gray t-shirt. Enzo wrapped his arms around him, holding him tight, a look of quiet, profound peace on his face. He looked up at me, over Leo's head, and he smiled. This was not a family formed by a wrong number. It was a family formed by the right choice, in the chaos, in the storm, at the very end. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please drop a comment below, share your thoughts, and let's connect. Make sure you subscribe to Mafia Boss Stories, like this video. And if you want to support us, hit that hype button to help this story reach more listeners.